Hi, this is Pierre Sabak, unlocking the keys to the mysteries. Now, today we're going to be looking at ancient alien abduction. This theme is found within my book, Holographic Culture. Now, ancient alien abduction, by its very definition, is ancient and is very old. And I'm going to be making the argument that the thesis that alien abduction is very old. And that basically that alien abduction is not merely a cultural product of the 20th century. Now, more significantly, the media depiction of flying saucers and their occupants, well, we can see that they're derived from the occult tradition. And this informs the conceptualization of extraterrestrial visitors within science fiction and films. But I think that this is a really important idea. And the idea itself is that the science fiction depiction of visitors is an idea which is ancient and informs the science fiction. And I think this is very important to understand. Now, we can see, therefore, that the theme of human abduction by alien entities is not a modern concept. And therefore, it does not really go back to the War of the Worlds. The War of the Worlds itself was a book which was based upon an occult tradition, a tradition which goes back into the Semitic and into the classical world. So the idea that the flying saucer and that aliens abducted people is a very ancient idea, and we're just going to be looking at some of these concepts and teasing through some of these ideas. Now, if we look at the ancient word for harpies, the word harpy, which is a type of female demonic entity, comes from the Greek word apui, which is an abductor. And we see there's a relationship between apui, an abductor, and opolite, a soldier. Now, within the tradition, this would be related to the angelic host. And again, opolite, a soldier, is related to oplon, a shield. The shield is a depiction or is a symbol of an angelic vessel. And the word ship is related to shield, so therefore pleon, a boat or a vessel, would be related to oplon, which is a shield. So an angelic vessel related to the abductors is depicted as a flying shield. And we see that there are also other ideas also within the Roman traditions. We have the nymphs. Now, nymphaleptos would be to be abducted by the nymphs. And again, we see the traditions of the jinn. The jinn are often depicted as being starving, or that they're ravenous. Now, the idea of the starving jinn feeds into the ideas of what the jinn actually look like, because in symbolism, the jinn is often depicted as a skeleton, as an emancipated being. Now, the skeleton or the skeletal being is actually a depiction, or is an occult depiction, of the grey alien. Now, of course, this goes back within the shamanic traditions. This would go back to ancestor worship. So there's this relationship between these skeletal beings, telepathy, speaking to spirits. In this respect, this would be non-human spirits. And so we see how these ideas then are encoded within the occult tradition. Now, obviously, this idea that the flying saucer and that abduction is a recent phenomenon is really coming from the deconstruction of the Jungarian school of thought. Now, I have a lot of time for Jung. He was a brilliant symbologist. I don't really have too much time for the Jungarian school of thought. So this is the school of thought which derived from Jung. Part of the problem of the Jungarian school of thought is that many of the commentators and the critics who are using Jung as a template, they themselves have not studied etymology and language, and so they're coming towards symbolism at serious disadvantage. In other words, symbolically they are illiterate, and this poses real problems in terms of deconstructing symbolism. So, in the holographic culture, in my book, I argue that alien abduction, it's very ancient. And again, we can see that in the traditions, in some of the depictions of the classical reliefs, you will see pictures of angels, and they'll be within chariots. The chariot is a depiction of the Ophanim wheels, which is this circular round vessel. And sometimes you'll see within the chariot, you'll see a child. Now, the child in this respect is actually making reference to the fact that the angels would abduct people. And it's interesting because sometimes within the symbology of the chariot, you will have on the wheel, you will have a serpent. Now the serpent is the seraphic host, and as I've maintained before in these talks and on YouTube, we've got this compartmentalization between the human angels, which are the cherubim, the seraphim, which are the non-human angels. And so there is this distinction between the cherubic host, or the cherubic host, and the seraphic host. Now often they're combined together. So for example, you would see on classical reliefs, you would see a cherubim angel, and then you would see the chariot, which is adorned with a serpent. So this would be the combination of the human and the non-human host, which are working together, which are identified with the wheel or with a vessel. In contemporary ufology, this relationship between the human and the non-human host fits into MILAB, which is which stands for military abductions. This idea that the military are somehow identified with the abductions of people and are connected to aliens. The military in this respect, in the occult tradition, would be the angelic host, and the host in this respect would be the human and the seraphic host. And although they're often depicted as being separate, they do come together and often conjoined within symbology. So you can see within the Greek and the Semitic traditions this idea that the human and non-human angels would actually work together. And indeed, the etymologies between angels and abductors are also a significant part of the angelic tradition, and is something which I want to go into further within this series. Now, we can see, therefore, it's contended by the revisionists that the alien abduction is a new phenomenon, and that is somehow superfluous to the flying saucer. In other words, that it's something which is new and which is really not relevant, or that this is a distorted tradition. And I actually think that when you go back into the ancient etymologies and the ancient languages and you begin to deconstruct the angelic sailors, you realize that there is this relationship between the angels, between abduction, and between daemonic and demonic entities. The daemonic and demonic entities would be equivalent to the jinn, jana, which is to hide or to conceal, jen, which is a serpent. This would refer to the seraphim. The seraph is a serpent, serapha, which is fire, which are the shining ones being a dragon or a jinn. I want to just therefore focus on this idea within the classical symbolism that the angelic sailor is part of a crew member of a circular vessel. They're also identified both with the prophetic tradition, but they are also correlated with human abduction. And as we said before, the ship of the angel is typically represented as a shield, a saucer, or a wheel within the ancient etymologies and the ancient languages. And these beings, therefore, are connected to abduction. I think what's also very interesting is that they also feed back into the ship of state, into the government, and therefore that they're connected to what I define in my book Holographic Culture as extraterrestrial controlled governments. And this is an argument which I don't really want to talk about in this YouTube video, but this is an argument which is found within the symbology, within the ancient symbolism, this idea that the gods instituted the governments, and that when you begin to break it down, the Elohei are the high creatures, which are the Elohim, the high ones. They are responsible for the laws and for civilizations and society. So basically, to sum up ancient alien abduction, I just want to maintain and show the viewer that ancient alien abduction is something which is really old, it's very ancient. It also ties into the modern tradition of MILAB, which are the military abductions. In this respect, the military are the angelic host, and the military itself is compartmentalized between the human and the non-human angels, which are the seraphim, which are a reptilian species. They work together, and they are tied into the angelic tradition and into the symbology of the angelic host. So that's basically ancient alien abduction. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, and please, let's make the world a better place. Thank you for listening. This is Pierre Sabak. Thank you very much.